Welcome, Yodoboon, to another episode of the Gifted Present podcast, where you'll be unpacking life with your host, Jess, your newest lifestyle blogger, and myself, Sehlynn, your internet friend and hype gal. So just before we get started today, just a little friendly reminder that every episode will be featuring a small business that is owned by a person of color. Why do we do this? We're not sponsored in any way, but we just want to show our support to our communities in this way. So a little preview of who we will be talking about is Swoozy. Hey, Jess, we're back for another episode. How are you feeling today?
Ooh, I don't know, girl. Lots been happening, but I'm always just really happy to be here with you. How are you doing?
I feel the same way. I feel like this week has been kind of crazy busy for me personally, but other than that, it's been pretty good. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, that's good. And I think, again, for anyone who's just tuning in or doesn't really know the reason behind why we do this podcast, it's because we both really suck at being in the present. And so this is our way to just stop time traveling, just come back into our present reality and listen to ourselves and just be good to ourselves. So I hope that we can do that again today with this episode. And then also with anyone who's listening, they can also just take this time to be present as well.
Yeah, I really love that you gave us a little reminder of why we do this. And that's so nice.
Yeah. So great. So let's get started then. And I can't believe we're already in our 6th episode, which is so crazy.
Yeah.
First of all, I just want to say thank you so much, listeners, to just all your support. We've been receiving so much love. It's amazing. I just did not think that people would actually listen to us, but here we are. Thank you so much. We read every comment, and the reason why we don't respond is because we're shy and we're so touched.
It's I want to be thoughtful with my reply rather than just giving I love giving 10 heart emojis in a row, but I also want to be thoughtful with the response and things like that. And honestly, when I first even see the comment from any listener, I get so touched. I do spend a moment just soaking it in and just oh wow, I can't believe someone's actually listening.
Yeah, and there's some really thoughtful things that people are saying. So again, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Don't think that we're not listening to you guys. We really appreciate it. It's just that we're really socially awkward and we don't know how to respond appropriately, but we'll get better. This is a learning process. Okay. So thank you for being gracious with us too. But anyway, we're already on episode 6 and we're already wrapping up our AAPI topics. So this series has just been so eye-opening for me, and I just absolutely loved all of the things that I learned from Sehlynn, all of the things that I've been learning from just researching more on these topics. And I think it's really great for us to have all of this information, but at the same time, it's also really important that we move forward and we don't just keep the information that we have, but we learn to use it. We spent the month of May covering AAPI topics, including history, immigrant family experiences, and racism and mental health. And so again, I think it's just important to make sure that we have a proper reflection of the topics that we discussed. And this is because it's nice to talk again, but if we want to see any change or improvements, we also have to learn how to act. It's so easy to stay up here in the conceptual and the theoretical and the ideas, but it's so hard putting things into practice. So I really believe that the start of moving forward towards action it starts with reflection. So we talked about in our last episode, we can't just point fingers at one another, but we also have to look at ourselves and acknowledge that we're not perfect. The world isn't black and white, and there really aren't any simple solutions to AAPI-related issues. We have to consider our own prejudices, but also it's so important to identify specific things that spark our interest or what we're passionate about. And that's because it's easy to move forward when we're moving towards something that you care about. And people are going to care about different things. Some people are going to be passionate about policy change, while others are going to be passionate about more Asian representation in the media. And that's all okay, and that's actually a really beautiful thing. So today's episode is going to kind of take in a format of like an exercise where I'm going to ask a series of questions, which Sehlynn and I will both answer. And if you're listening along, please make sure to discover your own answers to these questions. And the point of this episode is going to be to identify what you are interested in, what makes you feel that sort of passion and that excitement. And then we're going to talk about taking the next manageable steps, realistic, because as you know, Sehlynn and I are both really big dreamers. We have all these exciting things, but we never move forward because we don't think about the realistic steps to take. So we're going to focus on taking manageable steps towards putting actions to our interests. So how does that all sound today?
It sounds great. I love that you say like putting things into practice, because I think that's the hardest part.
Yeah.
To be really honest.
Yeah. Me too. Again, that's why we made this podcast, is because we don't act on anything.
Oh, Lord.
Sehlynn and I love to talk.
We do.
Okay, so then let's go ahead and jump right into this exercise. Sehlynn, the first thing I want to ask you is, of all the things that we've discussed this month, what stood out to you the most or sparked your interest?
Oh, man. I think there's highlights from each episode. Like when we talked about the history of AAPI, I was just so, I think, taken aback with how far our history goes and just how much we're not really taught about it in school. At least for me, when I grew up, I didn't really learn much about Asian American history. So to unpack that as an adult, I was like, this is amazing. Like, I kind of almost didn't have any words because I was just soaking and processing everything in. But then, you know, as we moved on to talking about our families, I really love like the stories that you shared about Motel 6. Like that was just like the best story ever. I like was like, oh my God. It's just, but I understand you. And like, you know, in that sense of like, your parents trying to do something special for you and showing you affection in like different ways. And it made me think about how I can really appreciate my culture in a different way too, just by learning how you appreciate your culture. Because I think the way that we appreciate it is a bit different. And then last week when we talked about racism, I think I just got so raw. Because it's like when you told me about your story about like your first time experiencing racism and that came from your own friends, like, I'm like, man, first of all, kids are so mean, and I'm so sorry that happened to you. And oh my gosh, I couldn't even imagine like having to deal with that at a young age because I didn't experience that, you know. And I just thought about it, and it's like we all go through such traumatic things.
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of us are just unable to process it until an adult.
Yeah.
Because like you don't really think about those things when you're a kid. And then especially with everything going on now, you know, it's a different time. So I think about the kids that are like, you know, 5 to 15, and I wonder what's going through their head, because this is like seeing racism through a very different lens than I did when I was a kid. Yeah. So I think everything we talked about sparked an interest in me, and I think it's very cohesive to everything, and because it's all related, obviously, but yeah. Now I'm just rambling.
Oh, that was great. That was such a good summary of our series. Thanks for doing that.
Oh, my pleasure.
That was like really good. I'm like, yeah, we did. Oh, yeah, that's what we did. Yeah, that was the point of that. And I just have to say, I absolutely loved your story about your sister packing you lunch and then your mom making a sandwich, because I'm just like so relatable. So relatable. And I think like that's what also stood out to me is the power of sharing stories. And it just seems like the more ordinary your story is, the more relatable it is. And more so people are able to be like, yeah, I felt that too, where it's like, it wasn't a big deal in the world's eyes to have like a letter put in my lunch, but it meant the world to me. And I feel that, and I resonate with that. And I think like that just made me realize too that people can just look at stats, right? Like you have the science to back up the facts. Like, for example, with Stop AAPI Hate, you know, the reports that they've given, you see the number over 3,000. and it's just a number, but then it becomes personal when you're like, oh my goodness, the person that got attacked it could have been my mom.
I know.
Just a random lady living in the suburbs, walking, doing some Tai Chi in the morning in the park, and then like walking home and they get attacked. That could have been my mom, And so that number suddenly becomes way more significant to me, is that my mom could be in that number. And that is terrifying because some people have lost their lives because of Asian hate crimes. And so I think like what sparked interest for me is the ability to craft a genuine and personal story. So I guess with that in mind, since we shared about things that sparked our interest, in the spirit of moving forward towards action, what do you think are some things that you can do to start diving deeper into your topic of interest?
I think continuing the conversation is really important. Listening to other stories, learning about other people's stories and journeys, I think will help me better understand what I might also be missing out on and not understanding, because I only see racism or AAPI history just through what we talked about now and just through my own experience. So I'm curious to learn other people's stories and learn more about their history. And then on top of that, I want to get more involved with our community. I don't know how yet, but I know that I just don't want to be a person that just stays stagnant, because this is really important to me, and I am passionate about it because, I don't want to just be all talk and then not do anything about it either.
Yeah.
Because like, who am I, like being like, share a story with me, let's talk about history, and then like, just like be at home, just eating ramen and not doing anything else. Like, I like want to actually like get involved in my community and do something about it. I'm just at the point where I'm not really sure what or how that looks like just yet. But I feel like doing this podcast with you, talking about things with you on this podcast is like a first step. And then I think the third part for me is trying to understand, going beyond our like community, like what else can we do as far as getting involved with, I guess. Because I read something where someone said, if you ever see something, report it. Yeah. So, like, I want to encourage more of that, too. So I guess that does tie in with getting involved with our community. But it's like, how can this be shared? And how can we get more people to, I guess, report things? Because it's not easy, Yeah. I don't know if that makes sense, but...
No, it does. And I think I just want to kind of challenge to go a little deeper into the practical, and just think like, what's one thing that you can do later today or tomorrow? Doesn't matter how small that step is, but what's one action that you can take that gets you closer to what you shared?
Then that would be just to stay open-minded and to not like look things so analytically. Because I think for me, too, it's just like based off of my own experiences, I think I can develop putting things into certain boxes just because, I dealt with this. But like I said before, we've all gone through things and it might be kind of the same, but it's also different because we're all different individuals. So I think a little practice is just always being open-minded and being fair when it comes to listening to others. Yeah,
I really like that because it definitely looks like a small step where you're just like, I just even want to change my mindset. But that makes a world of a difference because now you're able to see from a different perspective. So again, it's like, I think that's like so great. It's just that it's a small step that no one else can see but yourself, but it's still a step. And I don't even think a lot of people make it that far, So I love that. I guess like for myself, I don't mean to self-promote, but I did start a website.
I love it. Tell us more.
And that's why Sehlynn has been calling me your latest blogger the past couple episodes, but I never bothered to explain. That's how shy I am. Okay.
Check it out. jjesskim.com. Please check it out. Please. She's an amazing writer. It's artwork, guys. Art with words.
Thank you. But anyway, I think like I mentioned this website though because this is my way of sharing my story more. It's a small step that I can take, and it's through an avenue that I really enjoy. Because I'm not like this activist type of personality, and I think like I'm not the type of person to like stand up at a pulpit and just like preach justice. But this is definitely my way of contributing and being like, here are my stories. And the reason why I share all of these stories isn't because I want to be self-absorbed and be like, ooh, I have a memoir of my life. But it's really because I'm just like, can anyone else relate? You know? Yeah. And I think like that's something that I've realized too about myself. And I remember sharing this with you in like a different discussion, but I absolutely like love the work that Queer Eye does, you know, where it's just like these people are giving people the appreciation that they deserve and the next steps to move forward. And I'm like, that is so beautiful. And if I could just do something like that, I would absolutely love it. We're just helping people to discover their genuine selves and then rediscovering their own voice and finding their narrative.
Oh, I love that. Oh, so good.
Should we start our own Queer Eye? It'd be like...
That's why, you know, when I say I'm your hype gal, I just want to be that cheerleader, you know? Like always just clapping.
Dude, you're totally like JVN for sure.
Like, you can do it, girl. You can do it, boy. You are a queen and a king. Like, don't forget it. Ever. I don't know. I just like being loud. It's fun.
Yeah.
Like,
we'll just be called Asian Eyes.
Here's your spin-off series. Oh my goodness. I love it.
I do too. I think that'll be fun. We'll see where this journey takes us.
Yeah, for real. But I love that you're doing a blog, and I love that you're expressing yourself in that way. And I think a lot of what you write about is relatable. So I'm just excited to see more. I'm excited for our audience to see more and our community to see it more. So guys, check it out.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
All right. So what are some topics that you might have about moving forward and diving deeper into your topic of interest? And I asked this question because, again, I'm super excited about just the different projects that we're involved in. But at the same time, there is this hesitation in me, and I realize that it's because I'm honestly afraid of losing a lot of my friends. And I say that because I think a part of growing up in Korean culture, it meant that I had to have these values of being like this submissive woman, and I just don't fit into that role. Like I'm a silent rebel, you know?
Yeah.
Where it's like I'm not like really vocal about like, yeah, I'm gonna like get tattoos and like lip piercings and like dye my hair. Like I've never really done anything crazy like that, but I've also been very stubborn, and like I do not listen to my parents all the time. Like my mom is like, oh God, I'm so sorry, Mom. But like, I have been so stubborn with her where I think I've like given her more like psychological stress than my brother has.
I'm sure we've all done it.
I know. Teenagers are the worst.
We've all done it. Let's be real, guys. We've all done it to our parents.
I know. Like, we love teenagers. I think you guys are our future, but sometimes you could be the worst, okay? Because I was the worst. That's the only reason why I say it. I was the worst.
Dude, I was bad. I don't even want to get into mine.
But anyway, reeling back. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is that, you know, for most of my life, I did try, though. I tried to be good. You know, I didn't want to be a bad kid. I wanted to be good. Right. So I tried being quiet and like listening to men and like elders. And I tried learning all the domesticated skills of being like a good stay-at-home mom. And I tried being quiet and fading into the background, but even with all of my efforts, like my natural self would just like it would just spurt out sometimes, you know, like I wouldn't be able to be quiet because I have like a really obnoxiously loud laugh, you know.
I love it.
When someone does something wrong, again, like I have to at least ask them like, what were you thinking? Like, what was going through your head to make you do that? And so it's like, this was me trying to fit in, into this submissive and quiet stereotype, and it clearly did not work out. And I struggled with so much self-hate. Like, I thought I was so bad and like so quote unquote sinful. And I just really hated myself for so long. And it wasn't until like a couple years ago where I finally realized, like, I'm a full-blown adult and these things are not changing. And like, again, now it's like I'm almost 30, and I was just hit with this realization that there are really going to be parts of myself that are not going to change. And that's not a bad thing just because society says that it's bad. I've just started to embrace, wow. So was that a Freudian slip?
Can we keep that?
Yeah, sure. We can do that. You know why? It's because I'm learning to embrace myself more and more. All right, let's be real. And I'm realizing that as I'm doing that, I'm also starting to sadly lose more and more friends because I'm no longer acting like who they thought I was. And I don't blame them because at the end of the day, I wasn't being true to myself, and therefore I wasn't being true to them. But it still hurts to see that, because I'm very introverted, so I already have like a small circle of friends, and it hurts to see that it's getting tinier. And, you know, even though I want to stand up for what is right, I'm still hesitant because I worry that I might lose another friend in the process. But I guess like what helps me to keep going forward is that, you know, when we talked about friendships in our first episode, it's like you will meet new people along the way. Just because you don't have a whole lot of friends doesn't mean that you failed in the relationship circle. What I've learned is that the ones who genuinely love me for me, they're still by my side to this day. That just made me value them even more. And I also realized that as I'm being more true to myself, like new friends also come into the picture. So it is just this kind of mixture of like sadness, but also like I feel relief because I feel like I can finally be myself and accept myself. And I'm able to find people who accept that as well.
Yeah. Oh, I can relate with all of that, especially like losing the friends part. I think for me, what I fear the most is offending people because I'm kind of already past that stage where I feel like I've already lost a lot of friends. So I can relate with you on that because I've been very vocal the last couple of years. I mean, I've always been a vocal person, but when I believe in something and I feel like someone's wrong, I'm not one to be shy to, you know, say something about it.
Yeah.
So for me, I think I found myself being scared that I'm just going to potentially just offend anyone. I've already struggled with like the feeling of rejection for so long that when I feel like I just even offended a stranger, like that like small little girl inside of me that feels rejected comes out. So I know it's so stupid, right? Because it's like a little 5-year-old feeling rejected inside, but as a 30-year-old adult. But like, I think for me, that's just something I've always struggled with was just having to deal with that. Because I think for me, like I am one of those people that wants to stand up and be in front, like be with the crowd and just, hey, hear my voice. This is what I have to say because this is everything that's been going on, you know, giving all the reasons and stuff. And I am a very passionate person, and I know that can come off kind of scary sometimes, and it can, you know, people can be taken aback by it. So at the end of the day, I don't want to embarrass my family because I feel like I've already put my parents through so much. I mean, you want to talk about like dyeing your hair and like putting on like loud music. Like I did all of that. I was the external rebel in that way. So they've already had to like deal with so much for me that like I'm scared to come out with some of my own truths that I really want to because I think it's important because I don't want to be a hypocrite at the end of the day and being like, you should be proud of who you are and share your story. And then for me to just hide away and be scared. Yeah. And I think the only thing that, you know, holds me back is just, I don't want to make my parents sad. Yeah. Because I've already made them sad so many times. So like, I just don't want to see that like disappointment look on their face and being like, well, couldn't you just keep your mouth shut on this one for once? So if that wasn't there, I would be really loud about a lot of stuff. I mean, I secretly am on my TikTok. Hint, hint, wink, wink. I mean, if you really want to get personal with me, but There's times where I even like regret posting something, so I end up privatizing it. It's a struggle. It's like, do I post? Do I not post?
Yeah. So how do you work through that struggle?
I'm still figuring that out, to be honest. I don't have an answer for that because, like, there's days where I'm like, I don't care. I don't care. The whole world can know, and I don't care because I'm proud of who I am. And then I, like, think of a memory of just disappointing my parents, and then it stops me from acting upon it. Yeah. There's so much I want to share on this podcast, but there's, like, so many things I've debated. I think that's why I stutter a lot. It's like, do I really want to say that? And then my parents end up watching this video, and then they're being like, Sehlynn, why did you say that? Couldn't you just be quiet about that one thing, please? But, you know, the thing is, I don't give my parents enough credit because they really do love me, you know. It's just that
I think that's why it's even harder, is because you know that they love you, and because you don't want to hurt them, you have this thing that's like holding you back. And I still haven't figured it out either, you know, because I don't want to be offensive, you know, and I don't want to hurt people's feelings. That's not my main motivation here, but it happens. You know, even if the intention isn't there. And I think that I truly believe that that's where courage really comes into play, is that if you really think about it, like, courage cannot exist without the presence of fear, right? Yeah. Because if you go into a situation knowing that you're going to win, that everything is going to turn out okay, that's not being brave. You know, that's just taking a good opportunity. But when you aren't sure, you know, and when you have those doubts and you're scared about what could possibly happen, and you still follow through anyway, like, that is a true act of courage, is because you're actually facing a fear. So I don't know. It just seems like it's kind of a good place to be at, where it's like, oh, I'm really scared about offending people, or I'm really scared about losing friends. And, like, you have to just face that fear and deal with it. Like, I think even if it seems trivial, like, it is still a huge act of courage to do that.
So true. So how do I get to that point? Anyone have the answer?
I know, please. Just someone take over this podcast and let us know. Because we don't know.
I want to get to that courage point. I do. It's not that I don't want to. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to be like such a loud person where I want to like literally offend people. That's not my intentions at all.
For sure.
But it is how do I communicate this is what I'm trying to figure out. The communication parts. I just don't want to. I mean, you can be loud without being loud. And I'm figuring that out. So how can I do that?
Yeah. That's a good point, because a lot of times less is more. So silence is a very powerful tool, and a lot of times we use it incorrectly.
Yeah. Silence can make people think. It's like when you text somebody and they don't reply. Like, what? Like, let's be real. We're all wondering, okay, 8 minutes passed. You usually respond in like 2 minutes. What's going on?
The worst silence are the 3 dots. And then, and then it just disappears.
And then it stops. It's like, I know you saw it. I know you saw the text.
Yeah, and that's why they say that silence is deafening, right? Like, it can do a lot. So I guess there is just a lot of wisdom to be found in learning how to be vocal, and also when to learn how to use silence for good. Yeah. Finding that balance, I think, is so important, and also it's very difficult. Yeah, for sure.
You know, I'm also learning that sometimes volume doesn't necessarily equate or will result in something that you're looking for.
Yeah, that's so true. I love what you just said there. Like, volume doesn't necessarily equal power. Yeah. It kind of reminds me of, like, you know, in the cartoon version of Mulan, the only version of Mulan.
Yes.
Do you remember that scene where, like, the leader of the bad guys, the Huns, he's like looking at the emperor. He like finally meets the emperor face to face, and he's like yelling at him and stuff. And then the emperor, I forget what he says, but he's like super chill, and he's just like this, and he's like, "The mountains shall not bow down to the winds, no matter how they howl," or something like that. I'm just like, wow, that is so true. Like, you can be loud and annoying and have less power than someone who's just very grounded and still.
Yeah.
I guess, like, moving on to one of our last couple of questions is, so with all that we've talked about, I definitely want to bring it back to our AAPI community, because that's what this month was about. What are some tangible ways that you think you can show love and support for our community?
I think for me, it's really just even supporting small businesses. I think that's why I've asked if we can feature a small business of a person of color or like a content creator or anything like that. It's just to give some more exposure to these people, because, I mean, we've talked about it. We haven't even really been taught much about our own history in school, and you don't even see much Asian representation in media. I mean, maybe more so now, ever since like Crazy Rich Asians, and then there's that one new Marvel movie coming out. But I mean, if you take that out, like, who has really represented us? So for me, it's just like even supporting small businesses, like, and helping them get exposure, I think is a small but a big way of showing support. What about you?
I think, like, what I've been learning lately is that, maybe the facts of someone's story may not be 100% correct, right? And two people can see one scenario and come out with completely different opinions and of what has actually happened. And that's just because you're living in your own reality. But I will say that one thing that is concrete, though, interestingly, is your subjective reality. And what I mean by that is that you 100% felt what you felt. And that's absolutely okay. And I think it's so important to just build those environments where people can just say what they feel and express it without feeling judged. And then, like, once those emotions are out, then it leaves space for a less emotionally charged dialogue. You know, and it's like, okay, well, let's talk about what happened. And maybe you did misread the situation. So let's work together to then figure out a way to prevent that from happening again. And I know that there are outliers out there where there are just some really immature people who are stuck in this victim mentality. I'm not talking about those people. You know, we should definitely not have to bend over backwards to understand someone and sacrifice our own mental health and well-being for their sake. Like, definitely disengage from those kinds of people. But for the most part, I would say that we can have a civil and open conversation. And Asian Americans have been kept silent for so long. So I think it's so important to just even encourage people to find their voices again. So, you know, that's all I want is, like, you know what? Let's just talk. It's okay.
I love that. Oh my gosh, I really love that. I really like how you take very small but practical approaches on what you can do for your community, because I think for me, like, when I thought about this episode, I thought more like grander scale, but you're right.
When you did.
But you're right. When you, like, look at things a little bit smaller, like, it's easier to do. It's actually logical, and it's something you can do. So I love that you're sharing all of this, because my approach was like, oh, let's do this and this and this, but you don't have to spend so much money or, like, go on a podium or anything to show support to your communities. You can just literally do it by changing your mindset, by listening to people, by creating a safe space. It's awesome. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, of course. I mean, that's all what I'm all about, is finding your true self and living that out. You know, that's the best thing you can do for this world. I truly believe that.
I hope you get your spin-off show.
Thank you. Oh, you're co-hosting it. Don't worry. You're in for the ride, too.
Oh my God. I'll just come. I'll be, like, coming out from a curtain and be like, hey, girl.
Because I feel like my show, if it was just me, it would be like this chilled out, like, monotone. I need some, like, spark and some fire, you know? I need that energy that only you can bring. I guess, you know, one other last question that I have is, I want to talk about allyship Because I think that's so important because, yeah, we're still a minority group. And yes, we're the fastest growing minority group in the U.S., but, you know, we're still smaller in numbers than the majority. And so when it comes to the other minority groups or people in the majority group, what do you think is like one helpful thing that you want them to know that would be very helpful for our community? Like, I really don't want to sound rude, but I'm just going to be blunt and say it. Just be like, don't make it about yourself.
Oh.
You know, where it's like, it's not about how privileged you are.
Yeah.
You know, it's not about how guilty you feel, but it's more so about, at this point, it's super easy. We just need validation because for so long we haven't received validation.
Yeah.
You know, just listen and be like, I believe you. And I also want to support you by letting you be able to tell more and be more vocal. And just like before you organize and mobilize, just like make sure you understand where we're coming from. Like that's all I can ask for. And don't bring like your white guilt into it, or don't bring the, oh, well, we had it worse than you into it, you know?
You know, I really love that you're being so honest and transparent because I didn't know how to answer this question at first, but then I really thought about it, and you're right. It's like, please listen to us. Like, I didn't feel like I was allowed to feel like I was going through racism.
Right.
And that was because, to be honest, like last year, oh God, with everything going on with Black Lives Matter, like my heart goes out, you know, and like I really just felt it for our community too. And I was just trying to be vocal about it. And not one, not just two, but like a few people were like, hey, you know, like, hold your horses, ain't your time. But it's just like, wait, are you really listening to what I'm trying to say? I'm not really saying like it's all about me and my community. I'm saying it's like affecting all of us. But the whole listening part, I didn't realize, you know. And then I even have to check myself. It's like, am I being a good listener? Because like before I start saying it to other people, like I gotta like look at myself in the mirror and make sure I'm not being a hypocrite myself. Because it's so easy as a human being to like fall into that trap, I feel like, where you think you're being the hero and you think that you're like, you got all your stuff together, but in the end of the day, you might end up being like the same.
Yeah, it's so true. I remember like one time one of my friends and I, we were just joking around, but then it was one of those jokes where you're like, ouch, that actually hurt. Yeah. But it was around the time when that song, I'm Not Racist, came out. And I don't know if you watched the music video, but basically it's, you know, the song or the rap is like a dialogue between a white man and a black person, which I thought was so powerful and so amazing. Don't get me wrong. Like I absolutely loved the music video. Yeah. But it was just a white man and then a black man. They're at a table and they're just sitting together having this dialogue, right? And they're just expressing their views and opinions. And I loved it. It was so powerful, and I support the message. But at the same time, a part of me was kind of sad because I was like, this is America's view of racism right now. It's very binary. It's literally black and white, you know? God. And I was just thinking, like, there's so many other minority groups that are experiencing their own racism. And I remember my friend and I were kind of joking about it, and we're like, it'd be so easy to edit this video to include Asians, because all you have to do is just sit them down at the table, or not even at the table, maybe in the corner of the room, and just have them sit there. And that would be an accurate representation of like Asians in the discussion of racism in America.
I don't know why I'm laughing. Maybe it's like a nervous laugh because it's so true.
I'm just gonna say it.
Like just in the background, forgot. I just hope that we all don't forget about each other and we can all just work together, because I love that how you pointed that out about like, don't stop what you're doing. It's like our episode, like what we're saying, we're not asking anybody to stop what they're doing. I'm not. Like, please continue on. I just want to work together. Yes. I just want to work together, because I think if we work together and we combine our numbers together, like we're that much stronger, you know? We have that many more people supporting what we believe in.
It's true. Yeah. So I did want to wrap up this episode just listing a couple of organizations that I think that, if you want to just get more information or see just other ways to get involved. So the first one is Asian Americans Advancing Justice. I'm pretty sure a lot of people have heard about this organization, but if not, they focus on advancing the civil and human rights of Asian Americans and building a fair and equitable society for all. And they do this through public education, public policy advocacy, community organization, and litigation. And one cool thing that I wanted to point out is that they also hold various workshops for people, and includes things like bystander intervention and responding to harassment. So those are all available on their website. The next one that I wanted to highlight is the National Asian Pacific American Women's Forum, and this organization advocates more specifically towards women's rights, and so they work in policy change, civic engagement, and legal advocacy, and they fight for justice in reproductive health and rights, and they also fight for economic justice and immigration and racial justice. Then lastly, there's the Asian American Journalists Association, and this organization fights for diversity and representation in the newsrooms and accurate coverage of AAPI issues. And I just wanted to highlight this specific organization because, let's be real, it's been really infuriating to see these titles on the news headlines where it's clearly an Asian hate crime, but it's not reported as that. And so I just wanted to promote this organization because I'm definitely not seeing equality in the media, and I think it's so important to support an organization that works to put our stories out there. So again, these are just some organizations. There's so many more great ones out there, and if you want to share some of your own that you think would be great to promote, let us know. I think it would be great for us to just start compiling a list of organizations to follow or just to be aware of. And I think that'll also just be a great way to, promote equality and just provide a voice for more people in the AAPI community.
Yes. Thanks for sharing, Jess.
Yeah,
we'll have all of those notes in our show notes, so we'll make sure that you guys get resources.
Yes. And yeah, that wraps up our discussion. And so you guys, thank you for listening. And again, just to recap, I want to pass the baton to you. And these are the questions to reflect on for this week is 1, what are some things that spark your interest or that you're passionate about? And then what is one topic within those interests that you want to dive deeper into? And then the next step is to think about what are some fears or reservations that you might have about moving forward and diving deeper into your topics of interest, and what are some reasons that you can hold on to overcome those fears whenever you face them. And then lastly, what are some ways that you can show some love and support to the AAPI community? So if you could just think about that, and again, if you want to share your thoughts, comments, we love hearing them. We would really appreciate it.
Thanks, Jess. And just a friendly reminder to you guys, all of our notes will be in our show notes below. And before we close out, we would like to feature one small business. It's called ShareSelfCare by Swoozy Food. Thanks, Swoozy, for being one of our listeners. ShareSelfCare is also a guided journal and stress workbook that you can purchase through Swoozy's Etsy shop. And it's filled with fun self-care activities, helpful self-care tips, and inspirational quotes. There's more to it. We'll make sure you guys have the link. Thank you, Swoozy, so much for being one of our listeners. We love ya. And everybody else, thank you so much for listening to our episode. Please remember that all of our handles are at The Gifted Present. We're on Apple, we're on Spotify, we're on SoundCloud, we're on YouTube. Please be present with us every Wednesday. And we're signing out. So see ya, love ya, and ciao.
Ciao, ciao.
Ciao, 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 ciao.